Hi friends, I'm Les Mood, your host. Welcome to the Destination for Innovation series, brought to you by the City of Bakersfield and GreenTech Network. Today we're in beautiful San Francisco and we have a special guest with us, Gia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time for meeting with us. Wonderful to be here. We made perfect timing with the beautiful weather.
We did.
So could you share a little bit about yourself and maybe something your colleagues or the world doesn't know about you?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks so much for having me and for inviting me to be part of this series. So I am Gia Vacin, and I am a California native. I was born and raised in Southern California, and have never actually lived outside of the state just yet. I came up through the UC system, both for my undergraduate and graduate studies, and so I'd say I'm a proud Californian and very happy to be representing our state now. Something that I think people maybe don't know about me is that most of my background and my education is in ocean and coastal sciences and resource management, and so seems like a bit of a departure from where I am today. But I've had a lifelong love of the ocean, and it really is kind of what set me off on my trajectory for my career.
Wow, so we have a perfect setting for your background, actually. In terms of what you're doing now, where would you pinpoint that your journey began?
Yeah, actually I'd say kind of in my teens, I was volunteering at the Birch Aquarium at Scripps in San Diego, and really thought about how I wanted to kind of direct my career towards the natural environment. And then, that led me into undergrad, where I was starting to study marine biology, and I really started to think about and realize the interconnection between our ecosystems and the importance of that interconnection. And then I really began pondering how our connection with our planet and how we interact with our planet, the connection or the lack thereof, is kind of mirrored or reflected in how we treat each other and how we connect with one another. And so it was at that point that I really became dedicated to directing my career to helping people by helping the planet.
Wow, that's really insightful. In fact, I was just telling you before we started about my view on, people being an important part of technological advancement and innovation, so that's really neat. For what you're doing today, could you explain what your role is today?
Yeah. Today I am the Deputy Director for Zero Emission Vehicle Market Development at GO-Biz, which stands for the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. And we are really the lead point of contact in California for business establishment and growth. And so there are a number of different services that we provide for free of charge to the state, and I guess I would just say I'd encourage anybody who's interested to take a look, because there's a lot there, and we're the 5th largest economy in the world and rapidly coming up on 4th, so I think if there's ways that we can continue that growth, GO-Biz is there to help. And in my role there, a lot of it is kind of maybe seems like a departure, as I said before, from the earlier parts of my career, but it really is a lot around connecting people from different backgrounds and different opinions to solve problems. And it's around accelerating our transition away from fossil fuels into cleaner modes of transportation, and achieving our climate goals, our pollution reduction targets, and all while benefiting socially and economically the communities in California.
In achieving those goals, and in general, you've seen a lot, I'm sure, in California. It's so innovative in your time here. Could you share some struggles and maybe some triumphs along the way that people could learn from?
Yeah. I think it's really through those struggles often that we find the triumphs, right? And so I think that I can share some personal, struggles as well, but we're at a moment in time that's really challenging, right? We have some crises ahead of us and that we're dealing with right now that are big, and it's really going to take all of us to make the change and get to where we need to go, and I believe we can. So I really see it as an opportunity, right, where the best growth sometimes comes from the darkest places. So for me personally, I would say that an example would be I was in a working situation that was pretty difficult, and the work was amazing, it actually came down to the people, and we talked about that a little bit before we got on camera too, right? It's about the people. And so I made the decision to leave work that I loved without a plan and without another job, which was very uncharacteristic and pretty scary. And through that process of deciding that I wasn't going to put myself in that situation anymore, I started a small business and got to grow that, and through that really grew confidence and learned more about my own ability to lead and my capabilities. So I think that that's an example.
Yeah, it takes, I think, a lot of courage to take that leap and to go through that process as you described. Do you have some advice you would like to share with people?
One key piece of advice would be to don't be afraid to take what appear to be the side roads, right? It's super important to have direction and purpose, I feel. If we can have, our North Star, for me, rooted in making sure that I have a certain feeling about the work that I'm doing and that I'm contributing in a way that's meaningful. That's my North Star. That's important to me. Other than that, it's been really about exploring the opportunities that arise, which is in some ways how I found myself here in the role that I'm in today, which it is wonderful, and it's so meaningful to me. And so I think looking at how you want to spend your time, what you want to be doing, how you want to be contributing, and then being open to how those opportunities emerge in the world. Also, I think we cannot overstate the importance of people, a theme that I think it resonates with you too. Your team, the people that we're surrounded with, the leaders that we can be inspired by, that can make a huge difference. And I think that if we can carry that through into our communities and into the way we lead our lives, we really can change the world.
Wow, that's awesome. I totally agree. In fact, like we talked about, the people are a critical role, but it's also important to be curious, and as you sort of described, and to be open-minded along the way. You may have a guiding principle, but you really have to be open, and that's really good advice I like. This next part of the conversation is more of a thought experiment, because there are obviously some hurdles and roadblocks in the way, but we're going to think about the possibilities. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. So the first question is, what is some low-hanging fruit that people or society could bite into to make the world a better place?
Yeah. Well, continuing to stay curious, thinking about what our own personal values are and how we can participate in those in relationship to clean transportation and zero emission mobility, for example, thinking about the choices that we're making when we're moving around and thinking about the options that we may have. We're working hard to make whomever needs a single passenger car to be able to have accessibility to a zero emission vehicle. But also there are other ways of getting around, whether you can, at this point, afford it or not, right? So thinking about our mobility and how we're moving through the world and the choices that we make, I think is one way. Also to continue to engage with your communities, and when it comes to projects and things, identifying ways that we can support a clean energy transition, right? So being willing to take the leap into new projects in the community, finding ways to help streamline that, and really with an eye on how can that also benefit socially and economically, not losing that piece of it in terms of how we're looking at project development.
Projects and community engagement and the people side is more challenging, right? What are some of the bigger challenges in your view in this whole process that we should tackle and not ignore as well?
Well, certainly we need to be committed, as I think this administration, the Newsom administration, has been very vocal and very committed to equitable and just transition. And that is not something that you do once and then it's finished. It's a way of life. And I think that the way the state has been working towards integrating all of that more deeply into all the decisions that we're making is really powerful. And so there's a great foundation, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of interest, and there's funding. I think that we still need to connect the middle, the people in communities that we're wanting to to help benefit from these efforts are not necessarily feeling those benefits just yet. So I think that's one area that is a challenge and an opportunity, but something that we can't really let up from. Another area is, in the zero emission vehicle space, or really in our transition away from fossil fuels, is working with our utilities to make sure that we can bring the energy that we need to the places that they need to be. And so, for example, in the Central Valley or in the Bakersfield area, there are many projects that are constrained, right? It can be years before there's capacity there to build the kinds of projects that we need to help that transition. And so continuing to really solve problems on that front. And then, of course, continuing to work with our private sector to innovate and to help drive down costs and to ensure that our end users are having the experience that they expect to have in this transition, right? So making sure that for electric vehicles that we have the infrastructure that we need, that people can get to the places they need to go when they need to go there, and that they have good, affordable choices. So those are some of the main things that we're really thinking about and focused on a daily basis to make sure we can solve together so that we can move forward in a way that's fair.
Yeah, so speaking of together, what role do you see community playing in advancing this better world?
Yeah. Community can be defined so many ways, right? And I think California is built on many, many communities of different kinds, right? And I think that's really what makes California so special, is the diversity of our communities. And so I think it's bringing our individual wisdoms and needs to the table, and in making sure that we leave space for one another to understand those needs and challenges. And the best ideas can come from anywhere, right? And so making sure that communities can have a voice and some involvement in those kinds of decisions, I think really is the role, and ensuring that we, as we're designing new programs or thinking about different regulations, that there aren't blind spots and that we're not creating unintended consequences, right? And so it's that diversity of voices that the community brings that I think is going to be really important going forward. And so, so be willing to step in and bring that voice and bring that authenticity and bring needs and roll up your sleeves and work together with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of, moving forward in the future, when you're looking back and on your legacy, what would you like to see happen as a result of your work and those around you?
Yeah. A carbon-free global economy that is inclusive and just. And I think that probably sounds pretty lofty, but in my lifetime, I think we can do it. And it speaks to a lot of the things that we've been talking about already today, right? It's going to take all of us to get there. And there are rough times ahead, no doubt. It will be a bumpy road, to use a transportation analogy. But we have to stay focused, right? I mean, in my mind, climate change is our biggest threat that we've ever faced.
In this process, do you think it's possible for the process to be just, equitable, inclusive? And if so, how would you recommend that?
Yeah. I don't think we can ever take our eyes off of thinking through that lens. So GO-Biz, on our team, we've developed a zero-emission vehicle market development strategy, which is sort of our all-of-government approach to how we're thinking about moving the market forward here in California. And we have a set of 5 principles, the first of which is equity in every decision. And so, yes, I think that we can achieve that. It's going to take engagement that's consistent, funding. It's going to take probably regulation, policies, all of those things, at least from the statewide level, and really listening to voices and incorporating voices that have been, historically left behind or undervalued. Yeah,
I think voices are very important, and that's why you're here, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm curious, in your experience being a native and always living here in California, being in such an important industry and seeing so much activity, I want to ask 2 things. One, what makes California so special, and why is so much innovation happening here? And then what role can Bakersfield potentially play in advancing this innovation in the state?
Yeah. Well, I think to respond to the question about California, it really is that partnership between the public and private sector, right? So here we have, world-leading policies. We have an administration that's very forward-thinking about how we need to tackle the problems that we see, not just in climate change, in a lot of different areas, and we have, targets that are very ambitious, and we're bringing funding to the table, and with that, the partnership, the private sector is really, stepping up to the plate and showing what is possible, right? The innovation that comes out of in some ways, it's kind of like the challenges, right? The greatest struggles create sort of the newness there. It's sort of a similar cycle, right? They're meeting the challenge and bringing new technology, and so I think it's the combination of a supportive policy framework and funding, and the partnership with the private sector that's really bringing that innovation. I also, want to make sure that I say in the zero emission vehicle space, right? It's working. When Governor Gavin Newsom put forward an executive order that would, eliminate the new sales or all new vehicles by 2035 need to be zero emission vehicles, that was really pushed back as like kind of, that's insane, or that's not going to be possible. It's out of touch with reality, and we continue to accelerate that transition in ways that we hadn't even anticipated, right? So we hit a 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025. We achieved that 2 years early. We've achieved some infrastructure targets a couple of years early. 1 in 4 new sales, one in 4 new car sales today is a zero-emission vehicle, and we're noticing that that's just continuing to accelerate. And in 2020, it was just 8%, right? So to go from 8% to 25%, in that amount of time, the curve does get steeper, but we're showing that these kinds of things can work in that sort of partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's really amazing what can be accomplished together when government sets the bar and industry steps up to the plate, and there's a lot of collaboration going on. So if for those who want to collaborate with you and talk to you at the state level, how do you recommend they reach you? Yeah,
I wanted to go back to the Bakersfield question though too. The other piece of this, right, we have the public and private sectors, and implementation happens at the ground level, right? It happens in our communities. We can have all the money, all the regulation, all the technology, all of it, and it doesn't happen without our communities, right? And so all of our communities in California, including Bakersfield, have the crucial role to play, right? And so the opportunities in Bakersfield, I think, are to think about how we can develop new opportunities within the region that can enable this kind of growth and that can beget more growth. And so to turn to your question about how to partner, we, as I mentioned at the beginning, have a lot of different kinds of services. We spend a lot of our time happily at some of my favorite parts of my job, learning from others, talking, brainstorming together, thinking about how we can solve problems. And so if a local jurisdiction or a community-based organization or others within Bakersfield felt as though there was something that they wanted to reach out to us about, it's always an open door, and we'd love to work together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, everything you do. I definitely recommend people reach out to you. I've personally had a great experience with GO-Biz. I think it's an indispensable part of the innovative culture that we have. So
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Destination for Innovation. Be sure to connect, collaborate, and create with Gia, and we will see you soon.